This is a story took place back in Dallas, Texas, in about the mid '80s, and I worked for a rubber company, Michelin Tire Corporation, and many of you may have worked for large corporations over the years, and I was the young guy, and they'd assign us accounts that no one had ever been able to crack, and so the largest account of our largest competitor was one that we'd never been able to do any business with, and they said, hey, Bungum, take a shot at this, see what you can do. I'm like, I just got out of the service, I was an armor officer, I'm like, yes sir, tell me where to go. So anyway, I started making my plan and thinking about it, and thinking about this customer and how we could see if we could get our products there, and realizing as I went and met with the customer, and they were best friends with the competitive sales guy. I mean, they went hunting together, their wives were together. I mean, I wasn't going to be able to do this. You know, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do here? This isn't going to work. And then we didn't have any dealers of our own and had a great relationship with this client. And I'm like, I didn't have a relationship with him. None of my dealers had a relationship with this guy. It's like, what are we going to do here? So we thought, well, let's be smart about it. Let's be strategic. Let's be tactical. So we started asking some questions, and what we found out is that the customer was spending about $25,000 a month, or about $300,000 a year, with breakdowns on the road. In other words, they weren't checking air in their tires. They had about 1,000 trucks. They had 1,000 trucks. They were buying about 5,000 tires a year, and which, you know, so they're buying $1.5 million worth of product a year, but they're having all these breakdowns. But they had a great relationship with the customer. They had a great price when they broke down. But that breakdown, of course, would make their loads late and their customers unhappy, and they'd have to have people come and fix, like when you go down the highway and you see a truck by the side of the road, that's what was happening, mainly because they weren't checking the air in their tires. So I said, all right, we can maybe make some headway with this. So went to my largest dealer, who was literally down the street. I mean, you could throw a rock from our dealer to this customer. I said, could you come and help me? I think we could do some analysis here. We could bring this big account your way, $1.5 million a year. It'd be a great account for you. And nah, we're too busy. We don't want to do it. What? No, we got our plan. Okay, well, so plan B. Plan B is there was another dealer, a much smaller dealer, a dealer who had like no credit with us. Like we couldn't sell this guy anything because he didn't have enough money and he had a bad credit history. But the man who owned it was a wonderful guy. He just kept his, personally he was very wealthy, but he kept his business not so wealthy. Those of you who maybe run family businesses may understand that, okay? And so I knew how we'd be able to structure this so he could do it, but he was also, at the time, I thought he was ancient. I think he was probably 60, okay? Now I'm close to that. I'm like, wait a minute, he wasn't such an old guy at all. But anyways, I said, Bill, could you help me? I think we could pick this business up. We got to do some work here. And he's like, sure. And he came with me and did the work himself. So we went out and we did these inspections and did all this stuff and put together this proposal, and he flew to Alabama and met their terminal there. And bottom line, what we did is Michelin had a term that says inspect what you expect. Okay? And this works with kids, it works with business, it works with a lot of things. Inspect what you expect. And so what we did is we put a tire gauge in the back pocket of every terminal supervisor that this client had. And every morning they just walk out randomly to some trucks and check the air. And if the air was low, they'd talk to the driver and say, hey, what are you doing? This is your truck. It's supposed to be right. These tires that are low, you don't know it now, but you get 300 miles down the road, you're going to have a flat tire and it's going to cost us a bunch of money and we're spending 25 grand a month. Okay, so they did this. And in doing this, within about 60 days, their road costs went to like nothing. And so we were geniuses. And even though our tires cost a little more, they were saving a ton of money. And we inked this big deal for like $5,000 through this credit guy who had no credit. But since they went on national account and Michelin held the paper, the dealer didn't have to hold the paper. It was all good. So we were like rock stars. I mean, it was great for me because I was the new guy who got the account that nobody ever got, and put this dealer on the map who we couldn't even sell him anything because he never had any credit. And it ended up being just a wonderful story of how we got something done. So what are the points? The points around that, you talk about tips and things, as we talked to Joe, is you really got to listen, and this applies. I've been in sales a long time, but it applies in a whole bunch of things, whether you're coaching people, working with people, supervising people, you know, whether in the military, to a certain, you have to listen to what's going on. What's the problem? You know, what is going on here of what your big deal is? And then one of the things that I've done, and I didn't do it back then, my faith has grown a lot since then, but what I do now when I'm getting ready to go see somebody is I'll ask my guardian angel to talk to their guardian angel. Say, look, I'm going to go talk to, you know, Susan today, and we're going to be talking about X, and I have an appointment. I'm not walking in cold. We know pretty much what we're going to talk about, but help her to be receptive and me to be receptive, to listen what she says, and then what I say, we can communicate to find out what it is we're trying to get accomplished here. And say a prayer to your guardian angel even before you get ready to walk in, to have that, whether that meeting is, your guardian angel will talk to theirs, and you know, you'll understand what's going on a little more. Some of the other stuff is pretty straightforward. You know, be prompt, have integrity, do what you say you're going to do. You know, we said we were going to show up. We looked through all these old tires. We rocked around with tire gauges. We checked hundreds of tires at this fleet and came up with this report. And that's the data that was there was really informative and important to them. But the main thing is we did what we said we were going to do. When they outlined this problem, we figured out a way to identify it so that we found the source of it so they could attack it to make the money problem go away that was happening to them. The other thing is just have in your mind sort of a servant nature. You know, I'm here to help you. I mean, if I walk in with a sales card, a business card, and you know it says VP of Sales on it, they know why you're there. Okay, it's like, duh. You know, this guy wants to sell us whatever it is he's doing. But that's not really the point. The point really is, how can we help you? You know, and sometimes you can't. I mean, you can't always. I mean, let's put it this way. If the guy needed trucks, and I'm selling tires, I can't help him. What I can do, though, is maybe send him to the best truck dealer around. A guy's going to treat him right. And if you've been in an industry for a while or something, you may have a network of people around you where you can refer people to help get them the help that they really need for what their problem is. And when you do that, since we all live longer than ever, odds are you'll see that individual again, maybe in a different environment, someplace else, they move, you move. Odds are if you've helped them over time and really have that attitude in your head, you know, I can tell from personal experience, I can list numbers of people, or maybe you couldn't help them at one time, but you tried and you did what was the right thing. Later on, it's a place where then you can relate to each other, maybe do business, stuff like that. And when you do stuff like that, you know, you build that trust level that you have to have if somebody's going to hand you, you know, $1 million. So those are things, the networking activities that we can do, you know, in our communities, you know, whether it's certainly at church and other events. It's where you, and it may not have anything to do with your work. It just might be things to do with something maybe eventually can help your children or can help some other family members, the people you meet. You know, as we meet Nancy here today, that music therapy, I'm like, that's pretty awesome. You know, that would be something I would, you know, I could see being useful for any number of people. So that's just it. Those are the main things. And then a couple other items as far as things now later on. This is far separated from that, but talking about your prayer life. You know, one of the things that's not very nice now, you know, you can pop a CD in, you can pop the rosary in. A lot of us live, you know, 15 or 20 minutes from work. You know, that's enough time, you know, depending on what your rosary tape is. But that 15 or 20 minutes, you can surely say a decade or two. You know, even if you get a phone call, you can't get phone calls like that anymore. You get a ticket, but you gotta have hands free. But anyway, you know, you can say a rosary. You can say one either coming to or from work. You can make time to worship. We're so lucky here, you know, in Park Ridge. We got 6:25 a.m., 8:30. Julianne is at 7. You know, Ransom at 8:15. I mean, there's so many churches in the morning. Even if you're working, you got to get up early and go. Or in the afternoon, I see at 5:30. You know, there's so many places where you can go to Mass and you know, worship. Take that half hour a day for a daily Mass and really, you know, get your head straight and get right for the things you're supposed to do. And it's not that hard to do. And it has, in its own way, most daily Masses don't have music. Some do, you know, depending on the priest. But it can really have that sort of that calming effect where, you know, really, when you're in a sales environment, a lot of times it is competitive. Your job is to, you know, sell for the company, and it can be pretty nerve-wracking. depending on the kind of company you're with, you lose an account, it could personally, take bread off the table. And it has a tendency over time, it can make you nervous, and nervous in the way you live. Especially, if you're a small business or you're a private business person, you're running your own business, there's a lot on your mind. I've advised private business franchisees most of my life, and they're trying to support their family, and they have a lot on their mind. These things that we can do here at St. Paul's and the other places that church makes available to us really can help improve our lives and those around us. So, that's it.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
Dave, in thinking about what you're going to say tonight, did you also reflect on your faith and maybe how your faith has grown, or at a deeper level? And can you share any of that with us?
Yeah, well, the big thing is at that time, I'm a convert, okay? So at that time I was not, we always went to the Catholic Church, but I was not Catholic. So it's been quite a journey over that time to, have come through RCIA, do all that stuff. And then as you learn, as you go along and you see the things, that happen in your family life and things like that really, you can go one way or another. I mean, some things push people away, and some things that haven't draw people closer to God. And so we've been lucky enough, with Michelle, my wife, and our kids, to have those challenging events in our life be things that drew us closer. And so as that happens, you get a little older, hopefully you get a little smarter as you go along. That just those things that the Catholic Church provides to help you draw near to God. I mean, the sacraments and it's all there. It's just, I'm a convert, so I really had to think about it. It's the smartest place to be, and they figured it all out. 2,000 years, same group of guys, problems, yes, okay. But, like Michelle always says, look at the people Jesus surrounded himself with, okay. Peter denied him 3 times, okay. James and John fought to be at his right and left. I mean, putting the other guys down. Thomas doubted him. Judas, problem. So he's got 5 out of 7 right here, okay. And that's, God picked these guys, okay. So the rest of us, we're all sinners. We all have problems. Church, yes. It's a hospital, for sinners is what it is. It's not a place for, there are saints, but, but when you go through and consider all the things, like, well, I work for Michelin Tire Corporation. We were the best. I still have Michelin tires in my car. It was the best product. This is the best place to be. That's it. Now I'll get fired up like a tank commander, but it doesn't matter. Those are things as you learn and you see, and the people that you meet along the way, and the stuff that happens, and the miracles. This was just one little sales story, but there's so many things that have happened that really, like Nancy mentioned, you can see that hand of God just literally doing stuff. You're like, it's there. It's amazing. So, thanks. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Like a lot of cars on the dashboard, they'll have an indicator which will say like low tire.
Yes.
Do the trucks have anything like that?
They do now. They have the TPMS, tire pressure monitoring systems. Early on, they didn't have them. So I'll give you a little tire story. You see the stuff laying by the side of the road. Everybody thinks that's a retread. It's not. Normally what happens, an operating temperature of a truck tire is about 240 degrees. At 300 degrees, it starts to come apart. Okay? And what happens is, like a low tire flexes too much, and as it flexes too much, it creates too much heat, and the bonds between the steel, the rubber, the stuff, the components that are inside start to come apart. So trucks have them now too. They're mostly on the tractor. I don't think there's enough. I don't think they're hooked up to the trailers. And honestly, most of the flats that you see on the side of the road are trailer tires, because a lot of times, depending on the nature of the fleet, okay, but they're not going to check that. And there's been a number of things done to try to fix that. There's little extra gauges that go on to make it easier to check. One thing that is, because they'll do a walk around, you know, drivers are supposed to do a walk around before they take off with a load. There's color indicators on them. They'll have like red, green, yellow. It's a little gauge that shows, you'll see that. One of the jokes we used to do when we'd have new guys going down, you're doing sales calls and you're going out with new guys, and he'd usually be driving, you're telling him where to go, you're sitting in the passenger seat saying we're going here. You drive by a truck, you know, because you're driving on the freeway or wherever you were, and you take your hands and you do like that in front of the tire and say, yeah, that's a Goodyear. And you drive down a little further, oh, that's a Bridgestone. You freaking guy. How do you do that? Well, you know, it's spectroscopic and the tire's going at 500 revolutions a minute, and when you do that with your hand, it kind of slows it down so you can actually read it. I mean, you know, you got to have some fun. So, but anyways, mainly anymore, because the way that the tires themselves are constructed, you have to actually put a gauge on it, or have something that's actually checking the pressure, or have something in, like you've got in a car now, that explains, or that says it's low, and, you know, now for the most part, most of the time what happens, I mean, it's really low, it's going to go flat. A lot of times if you've had a car 5, 6, 7 years, you keep the car, the wheels are aluminum, they start to corrode a little bit and the air can come, you can lose air there. So Michelin was, I mean, their training was awesome. They taught you, they didn't tell you anything about business, but they taught you a lot about rubber products. So anyway, any other questions?
Dave, I just wanted,
Yeah.
I just have to say about your wife, Michelle. She's
Yeah.
my daughter Carly, our
Yeah.
daughter, my husband Paul's here.
Yeah.
She's Carly's CCD teacher, and she just absolutely loves your wife. And
Wow,
she's
she's-
learned so much from your wife, and just, you know, the presence of God
Yeah.
in your family is wonderful.
Well, and yours, she, you know, she'll come home and talk about the kids. So, she's really hardcore. She's like, she's a 7th grader, I take it. So she starts out first day because the kids come in and maybe they're a little. 7th graders aren't as cool as 8th graders, but they still are a little. They're starting to get a little cool. And so she'll be like, "Hey, who wants to go to heaven?" They'll all raise their hand. Stand up if you want to go to heaven. They'll all stand up. What are you doing about it? Or no, that's it. Is it automatic? Ooh, you start thinking about that a little bit. Is it automatic? If it's not automatic, sit down. They all sit down. They're sitting there. And then she'll go, what are you doing about it? Now they really start thinking. Oh boy. And she goes from there. And so she develops, the key thing there with the kids is help them develop a prayer life. That's the #1 thing. If you can develop a prayer life as a young person, that'll carry you a long way. So, thanks, Nancy. I appreciate it.